Hi learners, welcome to the course. Our today's topic is Data Warehouse Architecture. Myself Priyanka Gupta, I am working as Assistant Professor in Department of Computer Science and Engineering Data Science at Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Dundigal, Hyderabad. Today we are going to cover the topics are Data Warehouse Architecture Components. In that I'll cover the key components, the data sourcing, cleanup, transformation and migration tools, metadata repository, data marts, data query reporting and analysis and mining tools, and other tools. Next is three-tier data warehouse architecture. What is the whole architecture of the data warehouse? We'll cover that. That has been divided into the three parts. The first part is tier 1, second part is tier 2, and third part is tier 3. So let's start. Data warehouse architecture components. A data warehouse architecture is based on the database management system server. So basically, the data warehouse architecture, acts like a database management server, right? So the central information repository will be surrounded by the information, the number of key components. So obviously there will be some components. So from there that will be constructed, right? So we can say that there will be some central repository on that all the components will be shared, right? That will be consist of number of components, right? So the data warehouse is an environment, not a product, right? Because see, there is a architecture, right? There is a architecture. So on that we are storing the data, our data in the logical form. Data warehouse is an environment. So that's why we are saying the data warehouse is an environment. So that is we cannot take it as a product, right? So why it is a product? Why it is not a product? Because it is based on the relational database management system, right? So basically this is an environment and that is based on the RDBMS, right? So that acts like a central repository for the informational data, right? So that is a environment. The data what we have entered into the data warehouse, that will be transformed, right? So obviously for when we are going to use that after the ETL process and while it will go to the server, like OLAP server, so on that process there will be some of the transformation of data, right? So that will be transformed into the integrated structure and some of the formats. So obviously there will be change in the transformation, right? So the data will be transformed into the some another format also. So all of the transformation will be into the data warehouse while we are going to store the data onto the server. The transformation processes that involves the conversion, right? Conversion, summarization, filtering and condensation. So after these are the four processes, the data will be able to store on the data warehouse, right? So first we have to fetch the data, we have to process that data, and after that while we are going to transform the data, so these are the four things we will the data will be processed on that, right? The first is conversion, second is summarization of data, third is filtering of data, and fourth is condensation of data. The key components of data architecture, data warehouse architecture are, first one we can say the data sourcing, from where the data is we are sourcing that, the cleanup of the data, in the process of cleanup, how we are going to clean the data, we are going to fill the data, we are going to fill the missing data, we have to exclude the data. So these are all the processes will go into the cleanup. Transformation, here the transformation of data will be go on into the one format to another format. The migration tools, right? Second is metadata repository. So here that is basically the repository, that is basically the directory of the data warehouse. So on that, all the metadata will be stored on that. Warehouse database technology. That can also be database technology. That can also, while we are talking about data warehouse, that will be the data warehouse technology. So which of the technology will apply, so that will be depend on that. Then there will be data marts, right? So we have seen in the basic component, basic example of the basic figure of the data warehouse. So there were data marts. So that they are nothing but that is also a data warehouse that is basically based on the one business model. Data query reporting, analysis, and mining tools, that will also come under the architecture, right? Data warehouse administration and management, that is so much important, because all the administrative decisions and management of data will be taken here, right? So the data warehouse analyst and the admins, they will work on that of the side. So they will work on the administration and management while they are going to keep the data into the data warehouse. Information delivery system. So from here, the information what we have gathered from the data warehouse, that is going to be presented. So that will also be the part of the data warehouse architecture. So these were the key components of any of the data warehouse system. Data warehouse, in that we'll discuss about the one by one. The data sourcing, cleanup, transformation, and migration tools. In that, what are the functions we are applying? What are the things are there to taken care of? We'll see. They perform conversions, right? Summarization, key changes, and structural changes. So obviously there will be a cleaning process. There will be transforming of data structure, database. So there we will use the conversion process. There we will use the summarization and key changes, obviously, and structural changes. So in the from the one format that will be converted into the that the data can be converted into the another format. So these are the things we will process into the data sourcing and cleanup migration tools. Second is the data transformation is required to use by decision support tools. So there are some of the decision support tools on the while we will use that, then we will able to do the data transformation. So that is must required for to do the data transformation, right? So the transformation produces programs and control statement. After the transformation, we will after the process by the tools in the data warehouse, we will get the programs and control statements. It moves the data into the data warehouse from the multiple operational systems. So the data will come from the operational systems, obviously, because all the data is coming from any of the sources. So that is basically the transactional data, some of the transaction data. So that will come into the that will move the data into the data warehouse. The functionality of these tools are it is going to remove the unwanted data from the operational database. So while we are having the live data, while we are having the banking data, transaction data, so obviously there will be some of the at the time errors. There will be some we can say errors. We can see any abnormality in the data. So that will be removed in the to using these migration tools, right? So that will convert the common data into the names and attributes. So that will convert the common data names and attributes in this by the using these of the tools. That is going to calculate the summary and the derived of data. So what is derived data? after the transformation, what of the data we will get, that is called as a derived data. So these of the tools is going to summarize, and that is going to use the derived data, right? So after that, we can calculate the results also. The tool is establishing default and for the missing data. So if there will be some of the default value, some of the missing data, so the tool is going to fill that data. That is going to tell the database that there will be given query. So we will fill that data from the as a average. So that will be a default for the all of the other values, right? So where the missing data is not there. So where the missing data is there, so there we will fill the default value. That tool is accommodating source data definition changes. So this tool, migration tool and data transformation tool, that is going to source the data definition changes, right? Metadata repository. So the metadata is nothing but it is the directory for data warehouse, right? So it is data about data. So that is nothing but the data that is telling about the data warehouse data. That is used for the maintaining, the managing and the using the data warehouse. So how we are going to manage, maintain and use the data. So that will be taken care, that will be go into the data metadata repository. It is also having the two of the parts. So it is classified into two parts. The first is technical metadata. So what is technical metadata? It contains the information about the data warehouse data that is used by data warehouse designers, data warehouse administrators, so that they can carry out the development and management tasks, right? So that will be the technical data, right? So that will be the information basically into the about the data warehouse system. So that will be used by the data warehouse designers, data warehouse architectures and data warehouse administrators, so that they can develop and manage the other of the data. Right? So what it includes the information about the data stores. So where the data has been stored, that will tell about the transformation descriptions. It will also tell about the transformation descriptions. What are the transformation has been given by us. The data has been transferred into the another format, so that the description will be there to see that. Data warehouse object and data structure definition for the target data. So this technical metadata will tell about the data warehouse object and data structure definition. Why? For the target data. The rules used to perform cleanup, right? The data enhancement. So for that, some of the rules will also be there in the technical data. So that they can clean the data, they can transform the data, they can enhance the data in a better way. There will be data mapping operations, right? So the data will be mapped obviously, and there will be some operations for that. The access authorization, backup history, archive history, information delivery history, data acquisition history, and data access. So that will all be processed by the technical metadata. So second type of metadata is business metadata. So what is this? It contains the information that gives information stored into the data warehouse to the other users. So that contains the information that gives information stored into the data warehouse that is going to be used by the other users. So it also includes the subject area data, right? Information about the type, like including the query, reports, images, video, audio. These are the some of the things will be stored on that. Internet home pages, right? Information related to information delivery system, right? Data warehouse operational information such as ownership, such as audit trails. So these are the some examples of the data warehouse operational, that is ownerships and audit trails. So that that all includes into the business metadata. So that type of metadata helps the user to understand the content, right? So what are the content in the data warehouse? The user will be able to understand, and then he will find the useful data so that he can fetch the information, right? So the metadata are stored into the separate data stores, which is known as a informational directory. The informational directory, and other name is also there, that is metadata repository. So what it does, it helps to integrate, maintain and view the content of data warehouse. So the metadata that is in a separate data store, that is called as a metadata repository. So although it is going to help maintain and view the content of the all the data warehouse. Warehouse or database technology. So what is data warehouse database? Data warehouse database. So this is the central part of the data warehousing environment. That is nothing but the central part of the data warehousing, central part of the data warehouse environment. So this is implemented based on the relational database management system technology. So how the if we will if we are having the if we are having the knowledge about the RDBMS, so how it works, the relational database management system, same like that the data warehouse it going to act. So that will be implemented same as like a relational database management system. Data marts. So there will be data marts in architecture. So it is a inexpensive tools and alternative to the data warehouse. So it is basically based on to the subject area, right? So data mart is used to the following situations. When then extremely urgent user requirement will be there. When the extremely urgent user requirement will be there, then the data warehouse will act like a data mart. When the absence of a budget for a full-scale data warehouse, it's a strategy. If the database architect, a database manager, they will not have the funding, they will not have the finance to make a data warehouse, to make a big budget data warehouse, so that they will going to use the data marts. So that is nothing but a small data warehouse. When the decentralization of business will be needed, when the end user is going to ask about the central data, so that then in that sense there will be the decentralization of the data, so that will be stored into the data marts in the form of data warehouse. Data query reporting, analysis and mining tools. So what are these tools basically? So what they are doing, its purpose is to provide the information to business users. Who are the users? Who are the business users of any of the company, any of the industry, business industry? So for them, these of the tools is going to give the decision. The tool is going to give the decision, proper decision. So there are the 5 category for that. The first is data query and reporting tools. First type is data query and reporting tools are there. Second is application development tools are there to support to take the decision for the respective business users. The executive information system tools are there, EIS. The OLAP tools are there, so that some of the processes of the data warehouse will go on. The data mining tools are there. So these are the 5 tools will be applied on the data warehouse data, while the user is going to take the decision. Query and reporting tools. So what are query and reporting tools? That is used basically to generate the query and report. So basically the data warehouse architect manager, he is going to write a query. So there will be there we will apply the query in the some of the some of the part, and then we can get the report. We can get the answer for that. So that will be in the form of report. So that is a two type of. First is production reporting tool, that is used basically to generate the regular operational reports, right? So the production reporting tools are there. They are going to produce the information operational reports. Second is desktop reporter writer, desktop report writer. So that are inexpensive desktop tools. So that is nothing but the inexpensive tools that is operating on the desktop. So that is designed for the end user, right? So that will be presented to the end user who is going to for him we are going to take the decision, give the decision. So second is managed query tools. So that is basically used to generate the SQL query. So SQL is nothing but the structured query language. So there is a syntax to write any type of query in the this SQL for the DQLM. So there we will write the SQL query. So that is basically used to generate this type of query. It uses the met layer in between the user and database, right? So that offers the appointment and click operation, appointment and click creation of SQL statement. So this type of managed query tools that are going to generate the query tool SQL queries. So that can be relationship between the user and database. Application development tools. So what are application development tools? This is basically a graphic data access environment in which that integrates the OLAP tools. In that they are that is also having the OLAP tools. So what is OLAP tools? That is going to have the take the transformation ETL process. So what is ETL process? That is nothing that was into the first tier. So the OLAP tools that will be added into the application development tools. So that is nothing but the graphical data access environment and in the data warehouse. So that can be used to access the all database system. OLAP tools. So that is used to analyze the data in the multidimensional and complex view. Data mining tools. Application development tools. So what are application development tools? That is nothing but the graphical data access environment. That basically having the OLAP tools integrated on that with the in the data warehouse. So that can be used, that are the application development tools can be used for the all the database system while we are going to access that all the database. OLAP tools. So in detail we'll see what are OLAP tools. That is used to analyze the data into the multi-dimension, right? So OLAP tools were only used for the multi-dimension, right? And the complex view. If we want to see the complex view of the data. Data mining tools. That is going to use to discover the knowledge from the data warehouse data. So we can know the any type of data, any type of knowledge about the data, so that we will use the data mining tools. Operational and informational data. Operational and informational data. So what are that? In the architecture, so the operational data is nothing but it is focusing on transactional functions like some of the bank card withdrawal and deposits. So basically all the data related to transaction will be stored in the operational type of data. The data will be detailed, the data will be undetectable, right? The data will reflect the current data. So that is nothing but the live data, live transactional data of any of the bank, any of the transactional industry. Information data. So what is the informational data? That is basically the data that is focusing on the providing the answers to the problem. So that is given by the decision makers. So the data which is related to give the information that is going to give the answer for the query. So that is nothing but the informational data. That will be obviously summarized and that will be non-updatable. So we cannot update the while it will be stored onto the data warehouse. So these are the difference between the informational and operational database. So in that we can see the first difference. It will be on the basis of data content. So in the operational data, the data content will be based on the current value, right? In the informational data, it will be summarized, archived, and derived. So the informational data, that will be the summarization of the data. That can be the information so in the form of information, which of the data will be there, that will be the information data. That can be stored also, because that is having the history data. That is nothing but the history data. So that will also be the informational data. Data on the basis of data organization, there will be for operational data, it will be act by the applications. In informational data, that will act by the subject. That will be based on the particular subject, particular area, particular domain. So the informational data basically will be based on the some of the like we can say the industry. We can say on the base like if there is medical data, that will be the medical informational data. So on the base of data stability, the operational data will be dynamic. That is in the form of dynamic. The operational informational data, that will be static, but it will be until it will be refreshed. So that will be the static. That will be the same until if the user is going to refresh that data. That user is going to add some of the data. That is going to manipulate some data, right? On the basis of data structure, that operational data optimized for transactions only. So that will be optimized for transactions. The informational data, that will be optimized for complex type of queries, right? So these are the differences are there on the basis of these. Some of that access query, on the basis of that the operational data will be high in volume, medium to low. The informational data will be medium to low in the nature. The on the basis of access type, the operational data will be operational data we can have read, we will update, we will delete by field. But in the information data, we only have to read and aggregate that when it will be added. The operational data is predictable and repetitive, but the informational data is unstructured, heuristic, searchable, and ad hoc. The response time of the operational data is sub-second, that is less than 1 second, 2 to 3 seconds. But the informational data can be fetched in the several seconds to minutes. So that is the time taken data. So that is the 3D 3-tier data warehouse architecture, right? So in this figure, we can see here that is divided into some of the parts. So that is divided into first and second, and that is the third, right? So that is nothing but this is the first tier. That is the first tier that is divided. That is divided into the second tier, and the output, it is divided into the third tier, right? So that is a three tier of the architecture. In the first tier, we can see here there will be obviously some of the database. So here the operational database is there. We can see the external sources of data from where the data is going to being fetched. The some other data some of the flat files, some of the other executive files. So that after that, after this tier, the data will be extracted, the data will be transformed, and the data will be loaded, right? So the extraction process, the transformation process, the data cleaning process will be occurred in this tier. After that, the data will be loaded onto the second tier. In the second tier, we can see there is the bottom tier is nothing but the data warehouse server. So in that, the data warehouse server will work, right? So the after the cleaning and all, the data will be stored onto the data warehouse, right? So that will work onto the data warehouse server. In that, the metadata repository will be there. From there we can handle the data warehouse. There will the data warehouse managers, they will be able to monitor and administrate the data warehouse. There will be some data marts that will also be saved onto the from the data warehouse. On the basis of our requirement, on the basis of domain and the subject, the data marts will be there. So in the middle tier, we can say there will be OLAP server. There will be OLAP server and OLAP tools. On the basis of that, the data will be roll up. That data will be reversible. Data will be sliced. Data will be diced. So in that on that OLAP server, the data will be able to fetch from the whole of the data warehouse system. After that, in the top tier, there will be front end tools. So to using that front end tools will be the end user will be able to see the query and report. So right. So the query will be written and the report will be like the end user can get in the form of report. Then will be if the the administrator, the database data warehouse manager, they are going to if they are going to analyze the data, so they'll get the data in the form of analysis, in the form of reports, so in the form of graphs. After that, the data mining process will be there. The data mining algorithm will be applied, and also the data will be seen in the form of visualization, in the form of some reports, some of the graphs. So on the output level, there will be front end tools. To using that front end tools, the end user will be able to see the different type of reports and analytics. So this was the whole architecture of the data warehouse system. Right? It is basically is divided into to understand, it is basically divided into the three parts. Data warehouse is having the three-tier architecture, right? So in the first tier, the bottom tier, it is a data warehouse server that is almost always act like a relational database management system. So either we know because we are going to study this data warehouse subject, so we should know about what is database management system, what is relational database management system. So we will be able to understand easily what is actually the data warehouse, how it is different from the other data warehouse data management systems. So the bottom tier, it will act like same as a relational database management system. The backend tools and utilities are used to give the data into the bottom tier. That will be from the other operational sources, other data external sources and operational data warehouses. We will able to give all the data to the server, right? So these are the tools and utility that will perform the data extraction, right? That will perform the cleaning of the data, right? That will perform the transformation on the ETL process by using the ETL process. For example, to merge similar type of data from different sources, the unified format will be followed, right? As well as that will also load and refresh to the data to update the data warehouse. So these are the functions, these are the processes will be processed into the bottom tier of the data warehouse. In that, the data will be extracted using application program interface, that is also called as gateway. So that is nothing but we call as a gateway. So the gateway is supported by the underlying DBMS, and that will allow the client program to generate the SQL tool, so that the user will be able to execute onto the all the queries onto the server on the server end. So the gateway is nothing but it is the supportive, it is supported by the underlying DBMS, and that will be allow the client to write a program to generate a SQL query, right? So that will be applied for, on the server side. Some of the examples of gateways like ODBC, Open Database Connection, OLED, Open Linking and Embedding for databases, that is invented by Microsoft, and JDBC, that is Java Database Connection. So these are the gateways, so that will be constructed by the DBMS, and that will be given to the other client applications. So in this tier, that contains the metadata repository, that is also contains the metadata repository in which the information will be stored into the about the data warehouse and what are the contents of data warehouse. So that is basically a directory. In the second tier of the data architecture, data warehouse architecture, that is a middle tier also. In that, the OLAP server will be there. So that will be typically implemented by, there can be a relational OLAP model, right? So there can be relational OLAP or RLAP model. So what is this OLAP? So that is an extended relational database management system. So that is going to map the operation onto the multi-dimensional data. So all the data which is in the form of multi-dimensional, so by the using RLAP model, we can able to map the operation on this data, so that we can get that data onto the standard relational operations. Second is multi-dimensional OLAP. So in this OLAP server, we can also use the MOLAP model. So if the database architect is going to use the multi-dimensional model, so that will be a special purpose server, so that directly implement the multi-dimensional data and its operational. So that is basically a multi-dimensional data that is carrying by the this server, and that all the operation related to multi-dimensional data that will be performed by this model. So basically we will in the data warehouse system, basically the most of the time they use the multi-dimensional server. In the tier 3, that is a top tier, that is a front and client layer. So in that is also the output layer. In that, the end user will be able to see the query report in the form of, well, there will be given some query, there will be giving some reports. So the end user, he will be able to do the analysis, he'll be able to do the data mining. So on this front, in this tier, the client is going to see the reporting, analysis and data mining. So for example, there is trend analysis. If some of the trend analysis we are going to check, we are going to what are the analysis is overall is there, what is the output of that, what is the prediction of some of the business model. So in the third tier, we can get as a output. Data warehouse models. Data warehouse model. So if we can say in the form of architect point of view, architecture point of view, there are three data warehouse models. So the first is enterprise warehouse, second is data mart, and third is virtual warehouse. So these are the models to store the data. So there can be possibility that data warehouse can be in the form of enterprise, right? That is related to business model. The data marts will be can be there, and the virtual data warehouse can also be there. So there are three types of from the architect point. So the first is enterprise warehouse. So that warehouse is collect all of the information about the subject that is related to domain, that is related to the business model. So that is spanning the entire organization, right? So that is basically a business data warehouse. So on that the data will be related to the some of the subject or domain. The data, it provides the corporate wide data integration. So the data is having the corporate wide data integration, that is usually from one or more of the operational database systems that can be that we can get from the system external information providers, that can we get from the external sources. So the data is nothing but it is a cross sectional in scope, right? It typically is a detailed data, right? That detailed data we can see summarized data, and that can be in the range in the size from the few of the gigabytes to the few of the hundred of gigabytes or petabytes or terabytes. So that can be beyond this type of data, enterprise data, that can be in the that can be wide data, that can be huge data. So that is nothing that that will be the detailed and summarized data, and the storage of that data will be we can say that can be of more than terabytes, more than and beyond that. Data marts. So the data marts contains a subset of corporate wide data. So what is this basically? So that is nothing but the small part of the business data. So that is of value to a specific group of users. So suppose in the e-commerce company, some of the users will be related to the some of the particular domain, like medical. Some of the particular will be on the based on the electronics. So that will be the data mart will be the specific group of users. So user data. So the scope is concerned to specific and selective subject. So that is nothing but a small part of the data, the corporate wide data. For example, if we are having a marketing data mart, so they make that the data can connect its subject to the customer related to item and related to sales. The data contained in data marts, it tend to be summarized. That will be the summarized data, right? So that the data will be depend on to the source of the data. So obviously the data will be very particular on the based on the business model. So that data marts can be categorized into the two of the classes. So the first is independent data mart. What are the independent data marts? That are sourced from the data captured from one or more operational systems. We can say external systems, right? So the data that will be directly fetched from the one of the more operational system, external providers, from the other generated the data is generated locally, so within a particular department or geographic area. So this is the independent data marts. The dependent data marts are sourced from directly from the enterprise data warehouse. So that data is nothing but that is basically that has been fetched from the enterprise database data warehouse, right? Second is virtual virtual warehouse. So a virtual warehouse is nothing but it is a set of view over the operational databases, right? For the efficient query processing, and only some of the possible summary views may be processed in the virtual warehouse. So that is nothing but the virtual view of the data warehouse. So in that, the some of the query processing will go can be operated, processed. Some of the possible summaries we can see, we can view. Right? A virtual database is easy to build and but requires excess capacity for the on the operational database servers. Obviously, there will be that will be the virtual data warehouse. So there will be huge data, and on the basis of that, that will require the access capacity on the operational database servers. So in this figure, we can see here, this is the block diagram of that data model. So here we can see, if we'll define a high level corporate data model, and we can see here data marts, enterprise data warehouse, right? Distributed data warehouse, multi-tier data warehouse. So these are the types of data warehouse. The data warehouse can be stored like that. So the data mart, that will be based on the model refinement, right? Data model refinement. Data mart will be stored on the by the model refinement. Then it will be stored onto the distributed data marts. If there are distributed data marts that is having the more than one type of operational data, right? So that can be stored onto the data distributed data marts, right? So if there is enterprise data warehouse, that can be also will be go to the multi-tier data warehouse. So that is a basically block diagram of different type of data marts and data warehouses, so that the data warehouse can be stored in the form of data marts, in the form of multi-tier data warehouse, in the form of enterprise data warehouse. So that is nothing but that is basically based on the data we are going to use, we are going to store onto the data warehouse system, right? So that was all about the different all about the data warehouse architecture. What is the architecture, what are the different tiers, what are the different tools we are going to use on the different levels before we are giving the data onto the server. So we have discussed all of the tools and what are the related processes and related tools are there, related softwares are there. So that was all about the data warehouse models and architecture. So this was all about that. So thank you for watching.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.